What's up guys, my name is Ace, and the alpha for the 2v2 gunfight mode in Modern Warfare went live a day early, and now that we've had about a day to play with this, and I've put in a ton of hours playing Gunfight, I wanted to share my initial impressions and primarily my initial feedback to help the game and the mode improve. Normally, it would be way too early for this kind of feedback, but Gunfight is a very basic sort of a mode. We don't have access to create a class or anything. It's just 2v2, the maps are really small, and therefore I do feel like with several hours of gameplay time, that really is enough to start giving some really valuable feedback towards the mode and the game in general. Now, to be clear, for a lot of people that don't understand how constructive criticism works, I really enjoy Gunfight. It was absolutely the highlight of the game for me when I played the game early, and I am having such a good time with it in the alpha. So don't get me wrong here, I'm loving this mode. I just want it to be the absolute best it can be, and this is why I wanted to provide this feedback. So for the big question, is it any good? Absolutely, in my opinion. I'm having an absolute blast with this. I understand it's not for everyone. I've seen a lot of people commenting saying that it's not really the mode for them, and that's totally fine, but I'm having a really good time with it so far. However, there are a bunch of little things that I would like to see changed or added that I feel would improve this overall. Some of these things are likely things that are already in the pipeline. They are already fixed behind the scenes, or they will be fixed for the beta or for launch. But I am going to be mentioning them anyways because I do feel it is important to mention these. The first bit of feedback I have, and this is actually a pretty big deal to me, this is aim down sight sensitivity options. It's something we've had access to in Black Ops 4, and once you go back to a Call of Duty that doesn't have those aim down sight sensitivity options, it just doesn't feel nearly as good. I don't feel like I have the control over my character that I would like to have. And I really feel having those options available makes a really big difference in your enjoyment of the game overall, because you have a better connection with your character model. Now, the good news on this, I did want to point out for you guys, this is confirmed. It will be coming at some point in the future. I don't know if that means in the future of the alpha or the beta or not until launch, but Joe Seacott on Twitter did confirm that aim down sight sensitivity options will be coming to Modern Warfare, and that is a big relief. Next up is something that I noticed pre-launch as well that I didn't really like, and I have been seeing a lot of other people that really don't like this at all. This is the black and white screen that you get when you take damage. This is something I definitely feel needs to go, or just needs to be adjusted fairly significantly. When your screen goes black and white like that, and in addition to that, your audio gets all crazy, like your ears are ringing and everything, it just makes it that much harder to be able to fight back against your enemies. And I feel like taking damage itself, and the old way of having your screen turn a little bit red, you get that sort of red jelly on your screen, and also you flinch when you're shot, I feel like that's enough punishment for taking damage. I don't really feel like you should be put at even more of a disadvantage just because somebody landed shots on you. I think the worst part is the duration of time that this lasts for. It does take quite a long time to recover from that black and white screen, and when you look at Gunfight specifically and the overall length of the Gunfight match, if you take damage from somebody, you actually spend a pretty good chunk of that round in black and white and with your ears ringing, which I feel harms the gameplay overall. Like I said, taking that damage and being shot and flinching and having a little bit of a red screen appear, that's punishment enough for getting shot. I don't feel you need to be put at even more of a disadvantage. Yes, it's far more realistic for your vision to go black and white and for your ears to be ringing in a situation like that. But this is one of those situations where I don't feel gameplay quality should be sacrificed for realism. So I really hope at the very least they will significantly tone down this black and white effect, maybe desaturate a little bit and reduce the duration of that. Same thing goes with the audio. I hope they reduce the duration of your ears ringing when you take damage, because as it is right now, I just feel it's far too punishing when you take any sort of damage. Moving on to the next bit of feedback I have, and for those of you guys that were watching my live stream last night, you guys will probably know what I'm about to talk about. By the way, if you guys haven't followed me on Twitch, I will be streaming this alpha a ton throughout this weekend. I will leave that link down below as always. But this next bit of feedback is kill trades when it's a 1v1 situation at the end of a round. They don't result in a draw, and I really feel they should. It's really jarring to get a kill trade, so you end up killing the enemy player, he kills you as well, and then it seems like a coin flip as to which team actually won that situation. Now, yes, it's very possible and maybe even likely that one player kills the other like one frame sooner or something like that. But I do feel if you kill each other at the end of the round, that should be a draw, regardless of whose bullet hit first according to the server. I think it just makes a lot more sense overall that if you kill trade, nobody's left alive at the end of the round, then nobody wins. Now, of course, this is completely subjective. Perhaps you guys or the devs will disagree with me on this and think that the person that lands that bullet, even if it's not perceivable to the human eye, the person that lands that bullet first should just get the win. I think it would make much more sense to a lot of people. It would be a lot less jarring if kill trade rounds resulted in a draw. Of course, feel free to let me know down below if you disagree with that though. Next up on my list for feedback, this is actually a known bug, so they are aware of this, and it will likely be fixed, but I still wanted to point it out because it is something that I have been finding very frustrating while playing for my first day of the alpha. This is the film grain setting keeps resetting itself. I want film grain on 0. The game looks so much better with film grain on 0, which is why I'm also very confused as to why it's not the default setting. But in either case, I'm consistently setting my film grain back to 0, and it consistently resets itself at some random point. I'm getting really tired of switching that all the way back down to 0, only to have it reset itself, and the game does look so much better when you have film grain turned off, so I do hope they get this one resolved fairly quickly. Moving on to the next one, this is a bug that could actually be very bad for the future of the game, not just Gunfight, but just in general, and I hope they can figure this out and get on top of it. This is, every now and then, there is a clear inaccuracy between first and third person. What I mean by this is there's been several situations where I'm looking at an enemy and he is clearly looking completely to the side. He's looking nowhere near me, but he still manages to shoot and kill me without even looking at me from my perspective. This is a very frustrating bug to run into because you are making decisions based on what you're seeing, and when an enemy isn't looking at you, you'll often use that information to take your time a little bit to be more accurate with your shot, whereas if he was looking at you, maybe you would dash to cover, or you would just try and get your shots off a little bit faster, even if they might not be quite as precise. And there were several times that I died due to this situation where I would have made a different decision if I would have known that that player was actually looking at me, but from my perspective, they weren't looking at me at all. I also want to be clear here, it doesn't appear that this is a connection-based sort of a thing. There were a few of these situations where the enemy was looking at me the entire time. It's not like they had just recently turned to look at me, but they were looking at me literally the entire time, yet on my screen, they were looking in a different direction that entire time. This does bring memories back from COD World War II. This is a bug that still happens from time to time in COD World War II, where the enemy player's character model is doing weird things that it's not actually doing in first person, and it's really jarring and really frustrating to run into this. So this one definitely has me worried because it doesn't seem like the type of thing that they can get on top of really easily. I don't know if they can replicate this easily, but I really hope they manage to get on top of this one before launch. This brings us to the next bit of feedback I have, and this is the red name tags that appear above enemy players' heads. While I do like them, and I do think they should be there, I think sometimes they're a bit too forgiving or a little bit too revealing. There have been several times, especially on the Pine map, where there is no way at all that I would have seen that enemy player if it wasn't for that name tag popping up. Now, the name tag is good and bad. It's good in the sense that it counters those people that would otherwise just be like sitting in a bush completely invisible to the naked eye, which could be very frustrating and slow the pace of the game down, and nobody likes playing against those types of players. But at the same time, I feel like it's a little too bright, it pops up a little too easily, and perhaps they could make some sort of an adjustment to that. I don't know exactly how that's coded and what's possible with the name tag, but I do feel if they could make it so if there's only a very small portion of their body that's displayed, they could show that red name tag with a lot more transparency so it's not quite as bright and obvious, or they could have it so it's a little bit more delayed so that name tag doesn't pop up unless you're aiming in that direction for a certain period of time. This is one of those things where I just feel like it needs a minor tweak. I don't want anything massive done in this area, but if they just made a minor tweak to that, I think they could improve this. Next up, something we don't have access to in the alpha, we might have access to in the full build of the game, but we don't know at this point because some recent Call of Duty games actually haven't had this at all. This is some form of a ping meter, or even the ping bars. It doesn't need to be completely precise and show us our exact ping, although that is always preferred. I would like to see some indication of whether or not I'm on a good connection. There have been several games of Gunfight where I really feel like something was off. Like I'm definitely being held back in the connection department, but currently there's no way of checking and confirming that for yourself unless you happen to have a NetDuma, which I left my NetDuma back home, so I'm just kind of left guessing, and that's kind of frustrating to see. So I'm hoping we definitely will have, at the very least, those ping bars that'll show you if you have like a 1-bar connection or a 4-bar connection. But like I said, preferably it would be great to see actual ping numbers. As for the next bit of feedback, this one is Gunfight specific. It would be nice if when they're displaying the class setup, they would also show attachments with the weapon. Now, I do realize you can see some attachments. It doesn't actually show all the attachments properly, but you can see some attachments in the bottom right of the screen when that countdown timer first starts for a round. But it would just make a lot more sense if they displayed the attachments directly under the weapon when they're showing that little card that shows your class setup. And in addition to that, it would be nice to see if you have any perks on your class, because I know there are definitely some classes that have perks on them, because if you throw a grenade, sometimes the enemies will have that blast shield or flak jacket or whatever they call it, where it reduces that nade damage. But there's no way of actually seeing which perks, if any, you have attached to your class setup in Gunfight. So a little bit more clarity in that area would be very helpful. Now we're getting pretty close to the end of the list here. The next thing that I have here is there needs to be something done about AFK players. I have been noticing a decent number of AFK players in Gunfight, which is really annoying if you're matchmaking solo and your teammate just happens to be AFK, or even if you're on the other team, it's just kind of boring. It just takes away from the experience, because then it's just 2v1, which is way too easy. Now, I believe the reason we're seeing so many AFK players is simply because in the alpha, once you're done a match, it will automatically start searching for the next match. And I don't think a lot of people have caught on to this. So when they finish a match, they just put their controller down and they walk away and go do something. So they don't even realize that they're being put into matches over and over and over again, which leads to an epidemic of people being AFK. So this should be a relatively easy fix. They could just make it so you have to search for a new match every single time and it doesn't auto search for another one. And I think that would pretty much solve the AFK issue within this alpha build of the game. So finally, this brings us to the last bit of feedback that I have, and this is something that I'm still kind of on the fence about. I do think something needs to be tuned, but I can't pinpoint exactly what it is. This is the audio, more specifically the footstep audio. I've really been noticing a lot of inconsistency in footstep audio. Sometimes I can hear them pretty well and I can pinpoint pretty much exactly where that player is, especially if they're sprinting. Other times they can sprint right up behind me and I don't hear a thing. So it definitely seems like something is wrong. Something is off when it comes to footstep audio in gunfights. And don't get me wrong, I don't want footstep audio to be too loud in gunfight. I do think it should be toned down from the regular modes, which I believe it is if I'm not mistaken. Because otherwise you could just sit at the back of the map and you could hear exactly where the enemy players are going to. You can hear if they go left or right, all the way from the other side of the map, and that would discourage people from moving around at all. So I think it should be toned down, but if somebody's sprinting and it's a relatively quiet situation where there isn't a bunch of gunfire going off, you should be able to pretty reliably pinpoint his exact location with sound if you're using a decent headset. I have been seeing a ton of complaints about this audio, so it's not just me. There are a lot of other people that are having issues here. And while it would be great to have some specific piece of advice when it comes to this, I don't really know what's wrong with it. Like I said, I can't pinpoint it. I just know that something needs to be done in the audio department for Gunfight. But with that, that's pretty much all the initial feedback that I have for this. Like I said, just want to reiterate, I'm having so much fun playing Gunfight. I'm going to be playing a lot this weekend, and I'm looking forward to them unlocking the other two maps, Stack and Docks. But I did want to share this feedback because I do want this mode and this game to be the absolute best it can be, and we're at that stage now where it's really all about fine-tuning and finding all the little things and getting them fixed before the beta and before launch. But with that, I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about the Gunfight Alpha so far? Are you enjoying it? Do you not like it? Are there any sort of bugs and things that you've been experiencing that you'd like to be fixed? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.